Hello, everyone. Welcome to the January 9th OSPO Working Group meeting. We are under the CHAOSS Code of Conduct, so please be kind to each other. We had a quick discussion before we started the recording on whether these meetings should be Chatham House rules, meaning no recording and no specific attribution to individual people who make statements during the meeting. And this meeting is lightly attended because it's, still a lot of people are on holidays this week. But what we talked about is maybe giving the option to not record meetings based on the agenda. So some meetings recorded, some meetings not. And we'll probably talk about this in the next meeting as well, which hopefully will be just a little bit more widely attended. So we decided for this meeting to go ahead and record it because there was nothing controversial on the agenda, and a lot of people are out and might want to watch the recording after the meeting since they're missing it. Did I capture everything? Anybody else want to add anything? Okay. The first item on the agenda beyond the Chatham House rules agenda item was that we are in the process of we've moved beyond considering, and we are going to start a new working group focused on metrics to understand the impact of funding open source projects. So this will be the Funding Impact Measurement Working Group. And it will start, we decided not to start it in January and to start it after people kind of get back from FOSDEM, because that's a pretty busy time for people. So the first meeting will actually be on Wednesday, February 12th at I think 9 a.m. Central. Yes, 9 a.m. Central Time. So hopefully that will allow a lot of people to attend. It's a little early for the Pacific West Coasters, but 7 a.m. so it's not prohibitively early. But so the idea for this one came. So there are a few of us that have been working on some research and papers. So Kaylin Osborne, who works for the Linux Foundation and is doing some work with NGI, which is a funding organization out of Europe, along with Paul Sherratt, who is at the Sovereign Tech Agency, so it used to be Sovereign Tech Fund, which is a group that is currently funded by the German government, and they invest mostly in critical infrastructure projects. So they provide a lot of funding for projects. And both of these organizations, we've been kind of working with them to talk about how you measure the impact of this funding, right? So if you want to keep funding things, you have to be able to measure the impact and show, especially in these cases where it's public money, to be able to show that there was some benefit for putting that money into open source projects. So we decided that rather than every single organization doing this separately, and as you know, there are lots of organizations that have FOSS fund programs. So James has, they have one at Microsoft, for example, which is it's a great program. I love it. But so this is a topic that's really, it's not just about public money and public funding. The organizations like Microsoft who have these FOSS funds are also really interested in being able to understand the impact of the dollars that they're spending, and knowing kind of where that money goes and what happened to it and what what the projects did with it. So it's something that I think spans OSPOs. There's also a scientific component to this. I don't know, Sean, if you want to talk a little bit about that. I know in the scientific software, this is really important as well.
Yeah, I think it's really the big difference is that in open source that's corporatized, the projects continue and the funding comes from many different companies via in-kind or cash contributions. And in scientific open source, it's much more the case that when your grant runs out, your project may be idle for a while. And funders are very interested in tying funded software to scientific discovery. And that's a very longitudinal way of approaching things, which isn't the way that funders ordinarily think. And so I don't know how similar the problems are. I feel like the problem of impact lagging funding for open source software is a real thing across the board, but we'll find out.
Yeah, sounds good. Just taking a few notes here. Any questions on that or any thoughts?
Is it the same Zoom meeting link or are we going to have an announcement later?
There will be an announcement later, and I will make sure that I mention it in the Slack channel, the OSPO working group Slack channel. But it will probably use the same Zoom link. Since there are no other meetings that conflict with it, we'll probably just stick to the same one. We'll also say that that's really the only thing we have on the agenda. So if there's other stuff that you would like to talk about, feel free to add it here or just speak up, and we can add additional things that you want to talk about. If there's anything that people are interested in.
I finally got the okay to just go heads down and work on Viabeam for the next few months, so expect developments as
Ooh.
we
Great.
start pulling stuff and crunching it.
So maybe I'm not sure that everybody on this call is familiar with Viabeam. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the idea behind it and what you're working on.
Yeah, so part of my motivation for being in these meetings and being part of CHAOSS is talking about crazy idea for measuring whether or not enterprise companies should, or yeah, selfishly enterprise companies like Verizon, but also just generally organizations should decide to use a particular piece of software or not. Generally, developers will make a gut reaction of should I or should I not be using this project? Hasn't been updated since 2010. Hasn't had any contributors since 2004. Like, there are things that people see that they say, I'm not sure that I want to use this because it seems like it's abandoned. It seems like this, it seems like that. And so I knew that CHAOSS had a lot of community health metrics that helped tell that same story, and built the viability model around the idea of should we or should we not use this software based on how you tune those metrics models to fit your organization and fit your risk tolerance. And the problem that I ran into was then gathering and crunching that volume of data for that many projects is just very, very difficult to do. And I think that there is, like, obviously, hi Sean, Augur and Grimoire, I have tried to work with to make this happen, but they just weren't designed for literally hundreds of thousands of data points per project. Or I'm sorry, they are designed for hundreds of thousands of data points per project. They are not designed for hundreds of thousands of data points for hundreds of thousands of projects. And so I am building something with a tool, Apache Beam, that we use internally to crunch a lot of data for hundreds of thousands of data points for hundreds of thousands of projects. And I want to build it under the CHAOSS umbrella so that other folks can benefit from whatever work I get to do to solve a problem that we're solving here, and solve it for perhaps hundreds of thousands of projects or tens of thousands of projects that they want to track.
I will say that Augur will get will get hundreds of thousands of data points for hundreds of thousands of projects, but analyzing them efficiently, which I think is some of what you're talking about. That doesn't really fit a relational database performance model, let's say.
You got it. And you're exactly right. This is not a disparagement of Augur or Grimoire, because they are fantastic tools. It's just that I don't need probably like 90% of the data that Augur is collecting. And so I'm spending a lot of effort to get 10% of the benefit that I actually need out of the tool.
That's right.
So maybe like little directed gathering and crunching will help make that more. And, then talk about, can this be cross-functional to crunch little tiny questions out of big sets of data, and how does that work?
But I think the thing that like, I think Augur and Grimoire Lab both try to get the whole bucket of all the things you might be interested in. And I think
Yeah.
these kind of smaller tools like you're talking about will actually be easier to onboard newcomers to, and perhaps easier to consume as well. So I think it's a fantastic effort, and it's in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, to piggyback and talk more about Augur, Grimoire, Viabeam, about the product that I haven't built and doesn't work and doesn't exist. So I can say whatever I want about it.
The best product.
Well, it's intentionally not going to solve some of the same problems that Grimoire and Augur do. So, for example, I am not going to write a front end to make it easy to look at this data. It's expected that if we say, here's how this onboards into a Postgres database, here's how this onboards into BigQuery, here's how this onboards into these data platforms, that is completely out of scope. This will spit out the data, and then crunching it, visualizing it, making it useful is a separate problem that I am intentionally trying not to solve. And I think that difference in scope discerns the project a little bit, because it's not
Right.
going to solve exactly the same thing that you will get for using these other tools. So that's Viabeam. And I have been talking about this probably since I think, Sean, we talked about it at OSSNA in Seattle
In
briefly.
April, yeah, we did.
Yeah. And it was like, maybe that'd be cool. And then, okay, let's do that. And then, corporate America things kept me preoccupied for months and months and months and months. And I actually literally sent an email on Tuesday to be like, I can work on this now for my full-time job, right? And I can work on it for most of my full-time job at this point for the next couple of months. So I think I can get pretty far with a few months of just working on that as my primary focus. And hopefully it'll get to, my goal is to get to the starter health model that Dawn, you had pinged me, of the project starter health, and then also the starter viability model. More viability models will follow, but just getting the starters to see how useful it is and be able to kind of tell a story is my goal right now. I think it's doable within
Great.
a few quarters.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's exciting. I'm happy about it. Any thoughts or questions or feelings? I know Sean and I have talked about this for a long time, so we have plenty to say to each other about it. But anybody else wants to jump in or ask questions, I'd be happy to take them. I think that's a no. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's what
Very
I had.
cool. Anything else anybody has on the agenda? So our next meeting is January 23rd. Gary, are you going to be around to facilitate that one?
I believe so. Yep, I should be there.
Okay, awesome. I may or may not be able to dial into it because I have a thing at 6. Sorry, this meeting for me is from 5 to 6 p.m. And so I have another meeting I have a volunteer walkthrough for those of us that are working on State of OpenCon. So I may be able to dial into it, but if I do, it's going to be from a coffee shop or something random. So I don't want to run it.
Cool.
Awesome.
Sean, I'm going to sign you up to be able to. Are we recording this one? Did we?
Yeah.
We are
record it?
recording this one. So we talked about this, I think, right before you joined. We had talked about moving to Chatham House rules, and what we talked about was maybe doing some meetings Chatham House rules based on the agenda, and always having the option to not record a meeting if that makes people more comfortable. This
Sure.
meeting, we went ahead and decided to record it because it was so lightly attended that people might want to get updates and listen to the recording. But in the future, if there's any reason not to record it, we can do Chatham House rules based on meeting by meeting basis. Does that make
Cool.
sense to you? Does that?
Yeah, I'm
seem
happy with that. I mean, basically just, does anyone not want to record this meeting? Speak now or we will record it.
Yeah. And we can always turn the recording off midway through too. It's
Sure.
not necessarily
Yeah.
kind of all or nothing.
Yeah, it's our meeting. We make the rules.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Cool. A couple of reminders. So CHAOSScon is January 30th. It is in Brussels. We have just, nope, I take that back. The schedule will be live any minute now because they are, I think they're working on a pull request for it. So, so the schedule will be available anytime now. So it is 2 days before FOSDEM in Brussels. So it's not too late to register if you'd like to attend. It's gonna be fun. I've seen the schedule. It looks like a good lineup. Any question on CHAOSScon?
Is there any other in different continent at another time of the year?
Yes. So the other CHAOSScon that we do is tied to Open Source Summit North America, with which this year is in Denver, and it's actually later, which works for us. So now our CHAOSScons are not going to be right on top of each other. They're going to be spread out a little more because Open Source Summit is June 23rd through 25th. And those are the main days of the event. And then the co-located events this time are on Thursday and Friday. So we don't know for sure which day CHAOSScon will be. And we can't make any promises because they have to approve the room for us. But it should be probably the Thursday or Friday right after Open Source Summit.
Okay.
Any other questions on CHAOSScon? Okay. The other reminder is that the Linux Member Summit CFP closes this week. I say this week, technically it closes January 13th at 6 a.m. Pacific time, which means that realistically, if you don't get it in this week, the chances of you remembering to do it first thing in the morning before you've had your coffee on Monday are pretty slim. So in your brain, just think it's due at the end of this week. That's what I've been doing. So just encouraging you to submit talks. So I think most of the people on this call are involved in open source program offices. So you might be able to attend the member summit anyways, but if you aren't, the only way you can really get an invite to the member summit is to get a speaking slot at the member summit if you're not a Linux Foundation member. So that's the pro tip for getting an invite to the member summit, is to get a talk accepted.
Yeah, I think I talked too recently. I don't have anything else to say.
I know I was chatting with that with Sean and Matt. I was like, we've done this viability panel a whole bunch of times, and we literally just did it in November at the member summit because they're shifting them to March, so the two ended up being practically on top of each other. They're just 4 months apart. So we decided not to. Yeah, we decided that a viability panel would just be too much.
Yeah, I think like you got to do some work before you can come back and talk about what work you did, right? And November to March is a pretty aggressive timeline for things to have happened, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So personally, I'm just submitting some talks on other topics. I've got one that I just submitted around funding, so around this funding impact measurement with Kaylin and Emma from Microsoft.
Cool.
We're talking to somebody else about adding them to the panel as well, so we can get one more perspective. And then Matt and I are submitting one on the relicensing and forks work that we've been doing. And then Sean, you were talking about doing like a panel or a joint talk about like software supply chain regulation, something around that.
Yeah, if there's anyone that's interested in joining me on especially the software supply chain one, that would be great.
Vaguely.
Looking for
Vaguely.
panelists / co-speakers.
Well,
All right,
we
I'll vaguely
we
reach
can
out
chat.
to you, Gary.
We can chat.
All right,
Awesome.
let's do that. Start in Slack.
Awesome.
Mila, you went off mute. Did you have anything to add?
We're just curious about what the panel is about.
Do you want to talk more about what you were thinking, Sean?
I haven't really conceptualized it beyond the idea that understanding the software supply chain, and this comes from some work that Matt and I are doing together, involves not only understanding the technical dependencies, but also understanding the social connections and dependencies that exist on these projects and how to evaluate the lack of them when they don't exist. So conceptually, that's what I'm thinking of. And I'm sorry, I don't have anything more clearly formed right now.
Is it a topic you'd be interested in, Mila? Because they're looking for a panel, so probably 3 to 4 people.
Unfortunately, I won't be able to be on site.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
That's a bummer, but it's hard to get to these things sometimes.
Yeah, and March is crazy busy, so it feels like it used to be October, November was all the conferences, and now it seems like March.
Hey everyone, I'm just gonna unmute myself here and introduce myself very quickly. I'm part of the OSPO at Bloomberg, where I work with Alyssa Wright, who's more popular here, I think. Well, not popular is the wrong word. More frequently represented here, present here. But I just really like the idea of Sean's panel that he just proposed, because that's pretty much what I work on at Bloomberg. I would love to learn more about that, brainstorm, or potentially collaborate with you in any possible fashion.
Okay. Can we use Slack, and maybe I will create a channel with Gary, you and I.
Yeah, let me.
Are you on the CHAOSS Slack, Dennis?
I think I just got invited to that. So let me double check that I'm actually already on it.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Alyssa, and I'm happy to see you join the Bloomberg.
So popular was the right word after all.
I thought so. Maybe I'm a little biased. She's great.
Cool. Yeah,
Sorry,
I'm in the middle of booking my FOSDEM travel, and I may actually add CHAOSScon to that. And hopefully I can see all of you guys there and introduce myself in person.
yeah, that would be great. And I saw Mila. Sorry, I see you had your hand up.
Yeah. So Sean, is the panel in March for Linux Member Summit, or
That's the idea. Yeah, that's what we're definitely.
okay, then I would love to know more. I think I can make that one. I thought it's
Okay.
like CHAOSScon.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Okay, so
Well, 4 people. That's perfect for a panel.
that
So
is, yeah.
awesome. Look at this, Sean. We got your recruits.
I know, right? This is perfect.
I told him I didn't want to do it. I'm bored talking about that stuff. It's not my jam. Like supply chain stuff is just not my jam. And I was like, I don't want to do that one.
I tried to unmute myself immediately. I just couldn't figure it out. My computer wasn't set up yet, so I was here behind my camera trying to say something.
Well, I'm glad you chimed in and introduced yourself. That was timely. And sorry, Dennis, what's your role in the Bloomberg OSPO with Alyssa?
Yeah. Sorry, give me actually 1 second. I'm also, at this point, I can also activate my camera here. I have a face too. Nice to see you all.
Perfect.
So I work at Bloomberg actually mainly on software supply chain, and because of that, started working with Alyssa in her capacity as part of the OSPO. So my background and my thoughts are all things security, open source security, third-party dependencies, and so on. So for the longest time, my spiel has been about how we consume open source, but also how we produce open source. And yeah, clearly that is a business need for us, but it's also goes hand in hand with the general open source efforts and the given back idea that we are driving forward.
That's great. Thanks. Welcome.
So it's exciting times here.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I think we have reached the end of our agenda unless there's something else anyone would like to chat about. Okay.
Cool. Happy I jumped on.
Yeah, you got it just in time.
just got off a call in German, and now my brain hasn't switched back to English yet. So sorry for that.
No worries.
But glad this is recorded for future generations.
Yeah,
Cheers.
there you go. All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well.